Welcome to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV every week at this time, bringing you the big conversation, bringing you the great debate. But it can only be a debate if you join in, of course. That's why, above all, I need your telephone calls. 44-208-601-4555. That's the number to call. If you call us, we'll call you back, establish a clear line, and advise you to turn the volume on your TV screen down to zero, or no one will understand either of us. You can also SMS the show on 447800008066 or email us at comment@presstv.co.uk. Now, I've lived a relatively long life and I've seen much, but it's been a day like, well, no other in British media history. After 168 years, and after building a circulation, a readership of 6 million people in Britain every Sunday, after becoming the biggest selling newspaper in the English-speaking world, Rupert Murdoch's News of the World flagship has scuttled. It has scuttled on Sunday. Sunday will be the last ever edition of the News of the World. Now, I make no bones about my position on this. Britain will be a better place for the absence of the News of the World, which became a byword for corruption, for skullduggery of all kind, for mendacity, for the most prurient and despicable and disgusting dabbling of its fingers in the souls of other people, to coin a phrase. So, although I'm sorry for the low-paid workers in the News of the World, they're giving their jobs so that the people at the top of the Rupert Murdoch empire can keep theirs, but only surely for now. Because, of course, the disappearance of the News of the World still leaves Mr. Rupert Murdoch in control of the commanding heights of the British press, still in command of The Sun, which will now expand to a 7-day-a-week operation. So there will be a Sunday edition of The Sun, which will hope to take the place, no doubt, of the News of the World, and still owns the Times and the Sunday Times, and of course, Sky B, or at least 39% of it. Mr. Murdoch is trying to take over the remaining 61% of it, but he required the permission of the British government to get it. And such is the terror in the hearts of virtually all politicians in the mainstream political system in this country of the vengeance of Mr. Murdoch. One Prime Minister after another has been ready to fly over the world to get down on their knees and make obeisance at the feet of the great sun god Rupert Murdoch, who was an Australian, who became British, is now an American, and if he lives long enough might end up Chinese. Those of you who follow these matters will know what I mean. But Mr. Murdoch's power, controlling all those newspaper sales and all that TV landscape, is such to terrorize the political system. He makes and breaks prime ministers. And this prime minister has been not unique in the servile way in which he has approached the media baron. But now that we know that the News of the World is so ridden with corruption and criminality that its owners are closing it down because the management have allowed the newspaper to become a crime scene, the question that's being asked, and will increasingly be asked over the next weeks, is, are these people fit and proper to hold a television broadcaster licence? That's a subject that we are going to follow, and I personally am going to follow by every means at my disposal. I say no. I say the government should tell Mr. Murdoch that his day is done and that it'd be better divesting himself of his British media operation. That would still leave him with the ultimate in mendacity, the Fox News operation, which, again, I intend to be drawing the public's attention to increasingly over the next weeks and months. Well, I talked about the scuttling of the News of the World. What about the metaphorical sinking of the flotilla that was destined for Gaza? It hasn't been sunk under the waves, but it has been prevented, not only from entering Gaza waters, but for even setting out in that direction. Whose job was it to make sure that small ships filled with humanitarian activists, Christians, Muslims and Jews and non-believers, to try and reach Gaza as an act of solidarity with the besieged people there? Who moved heaven and earth, and the seas for that matter, to try and stop them getting there? Well, it's been a combination of craven cowardice, and you'll see some footage later here on the show of the Greek government and its forces bearing weapons, boarding humanitarian ships, and forcing the Canadians, in this case, back to shore in defense of Israel. Greece, which not so long ago was the most advanced country in the whole of Europe on the Palestinian subject, has become an agent of what they call Israel and Mr. Netanyahu. The Prime Minister of Greece, George Papandreou, has caused, I have no doubt, the turning of his father Andreas in his grave. His friendship with Netanyahu and Greece's friendship with what they call Israel bears the primary responsibility for the scuttling of Freedom Flotilla 2. But so does Turkey, which with its raison d'etat, reasons of state, ensured that the Turkish participation in Freedom Flotilla 2 would bear no relationship to the participation in Freedom Flotilla 1, and that the Mavi Marmara, and remember this flotilla's whole point was that it was going to take the Mavi Marmara back to Gaza to commemorate the murder of 9 Turkish citizens on the 31st of May of last year, murder being my word for it. I'm not sure what the killing of unarmed people in cold blood by heavily armed commandos can otherwise be described as myself, but I'm ready to argue that with anyone. When the Turks pulled the plug on the Mavi Marmara and the Greeks betrayed Palestine to what they call Israel, and the campaign of intimidation and threat and even sabotage worked its way through all of this miserable story, it was clear that there wasn't going to be a Freedom Flotilla 2. But there will be other attempts to break the siege. Watch this space, because I'll be announcing one of them very shortly. In Bahrain, the suppression of the democracy protesters continues with Saudi collaboration. They say they've withdrawn their forces. I don't believe that for 1 second. But what about the fact that German panzers are now going to be rolling across the deserts of Arabia, painted in the colours of Al Saud? Yes, that's right. Germany has just sold 200 battle tanks to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the grimmest, most unfree country on the earth. Saudi Arabia, the dungeon state of Saudi Arabia, buying hundreds of battle tanks from an oh so respectable European Union country. Who would have thought it? Huh. And on Libya, the Russian government has warned NATO that the war in Libya has reached an impasse, a stalemate, which can only be broken by politics and not by bombs. There's much more coming up over the course of the next 55 minutes or so. It goes without saying that these are all my personal views. They're not the views of Press TV. They're not the views of any country. And if you have a different point of view, your call will be prioritized. You'll be up on the screen arguing with me. And that's what this show is all about. William in London is on the line about Libya and the UK. William, welcome to comment, my friend.
Hello, George.
Hi.
Just a couple of things. One is I endorse what you said about the news of the world. I was, for a time, over 20 years or 30 years, a stringer. When I was overseas, in different parts of the world, and for News Group, and they paid me very well. However, I could never really sympathise with the sort of raison d'etre of News Group and the way the Sun developed in the mid-1960s.
Yes.
You recall the Sun came out of the Daily Herald.
Indeed, it was a Labour paper in those days.
Yes. And then suddenly, towards the end of the 1960s, we suddenly realized there was a new paper on the market that just featured topless women.
Yes.
And that was the way it made its circulation.
Yes.
Now, I'm afraid I'm a bit of a puritanical character, and I was quite happy to work for the Sun while I was not having to see the newspaper. You know, I'd send dispatches from wherever and get paid. However, when I returned to UK, I simply could not, for these reasons of, you know, reservations about their page 3, basically, work for the Sun. Now, however, as time went on, I then saw that the whole Sun, News of the World, Times, Sunday Times arrangement was entirely dishonest on a political level.
Yeah.
Because the way they backed up wars and the neocons. I remember in 1999 when the war against Yugoslavia was started, I spoke to some of my old Sun colleagues about it. And I said, why is the Sun backing this NATO action in Yugoslavia? And they said, it's coming from on high. It's coming right from the top.
Well, of course, they always, William, portrayed themselves as the friend of the soldier. But we discovered over the last 48 hours that they were actually hacking the telephones of dead soldiers and the families of dead soldiers to try and get nuggets of scandal that they could splash in their dirty newspapers.
What they did is they backed up from 99 onwards every war that Tony Blair and George Bush did, and including the Afghanistan war. I even saw yesterday or 2 days ago when I went visiting my local fish and chip shop a nonsensical article by General Dannett, Lord Dannett as he is now, saying we can't possibly leave Afghanistan yet because the job is half done. Well, the job was a nonsense right from the beginning.
You know what, William, I could talk to you all night.
Yes.
I could talk to you all night, William, but I've got to press on. It's been a great call and great to hear from you especially, as someone who was once a part of the horse's mouth, but could no longer stand the stench. William in London, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to John in Surrey on the News of the World. John, welcome to the show, my friend.
Good evening, George.
Good evening.
I'd like to talk about two issues, one about the hacking and then the Israeli-Palestinian.
Go ahead, sir.
Right. On the hacking, well, we live in the age of scandals and sensationalism, and the press are the main perpetrators. They constantly push the boundaries of decency. In a way, these hackings were inevitable. As journalists are unfettered, uncontrolled, they're constantly competing with each other for the next scandal. But the good news is this, that some advertisers have decided to disassociate themselves with the Murdoch press, thereby being a major part of forcing the closure of News of the World. But as you rightly said, the danger is that it will rear its ugly head elsewhere by way of expanding the other parts of the empire.
Yes, although it won't be the same, John. I mean, it's a major defeat for Rupert Murdoch. We shouldn't try to rescue him from that ignominy. But that doesn't mean that the problem has gone away.
Correct. And I think the public, really, they have a major role to play here. The public should get involved and be more on their watch and actually boycott. When these kind of problems arise, make their voice heard by actually boycotting.
Well, John, on my Facebook page, George Galloway MP, I've been campaigning along these lines. Murdoch's newspapers, don't buy them, don't sell them. I speak to all our friends who are newsagents and shopkeepers out there. Don't buy them, don't sell them, and don't advertise in them. That's the best way to send Murdoch back to New York and Fox News and leave us alone. John, go on to your next subject because we're under pressure of time.
And I'm sure more and more people will listen to your voice now on that issue. Okay. Now, Israel. Now, the world and the ordinary people in the West have woken up to the Israeli, if I can use a strong word, lie on the Palestinian question. And the fact that Israel constantly says is Palestinians are not serious about peace. Now, pre-Sharon, a very small, informed part of the Western world were kind of anti-Israeli, if you like. But by contrast today, if I were to hazard a guess, the majority of ordinary people in the West disagree with the Israeli government approach to the Palestinian question. So it's about time the Israeli people and the government start soul-searching and getting serious about their approach.
Well, of course, that's a very powerful point, John, and you're right in everything that you said. But there's no sign that the Israeli people have woken up to this truth and the changing landscape politically that's all around them. Indeed, like the Boers, the white settlers in South Africa, prior to the ending of apartheid, they seem still to believe that they can continue, as usual, their apartheid practices in what they call Israel. And I fear that there will have to be more struggle inside and around the world before the Israeli public, as the Boers did, wake up to the fact that their apartheid will have to come to an end. John, thanks for the call. Let's go to Manchester, talk to Sarah on Libya and NATO. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hello, George.
Hi.
I'm calling about the Russia one in NATO.
Yes.
Basically, I think Russia's position in the Libyan conflict is not known because, from one hand, it did not use the veto to stop the security resolution, but on the other hand, it keeps on warning NATO from its actions. So I think it's basically unclear of what's going on. But personally, I think there is a Cold War still going on between USA and Russia. So, I think what Russia is doing now is opposing anything USA does.
No, I don't think that's the case at all, Sarah. I think you're misreading that. The Cold War is going on between the United States and Russia and China. China and Russia are regarded by the United States as their adversaries, historically and contemporaneously and into the future. I think the reason why Russia did not veto the Security Council resolution had more to do with internal Russian politics, a conflict between Medvedev, the president, and Vladimir Putin, the prime minister. I believe there has been a political struggle in Moscow around this question and other questions, and that Putin is now back in charge and will soon be the new president of Russia. And that's why the Russian position has been hardening up. But of course, the resolution was passed, and if they didn't know that the NATO leaders would completely distort, twist, bend, subvert, and corrupt the Security Council resolution till it became mere putty in their hands, then they're fools. And if they did know, they're worse than fools. Sarah, thanks for the call. Let's talk to Kevin in Britain on the Greece issue, I suppose, in relation to the flotilla. Kevin, welcome.
Hello, George. It's not to speak to you last. I've spoken on the programme a few times, but not to yourself.
Welcome, welcome.
Speak to a fellow northerner.
Welcome.
I just can't get my head around what's happening with Greece. I've been following it on Press TV because there's nothing on BBC or RTV or anything like that. It's obviously some kind of media blockade going on there of their own. But I have been following it on Facebook as well because there's people in Greece sort of putting their own posts out. I just can't get my head around why Greece is stopping these ships going.
Well, Greece is in an economically perilous condition, and I have no doubt that those who support Israel have used the peril in which Greece stands, economically speaking, to blackmail them. I have no doubt at all that sabotage was used in Piraeus, in a Greek port in the European Union, either directly by Israel or on Israel's behalf, to damage the ships that were there. And I have no doubt at all that the Prime Minister, Papandreou, with his special relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, a pretty gruesome, grisly duo they make, also has a lot to do with it. And lastly, I suppose, the Greek people are completely preoccupied with other things. You're not going to get much of a campaign going in Greece at the moment when people are facing a 30% cut in their real earnings. So it's for all these reasons, I think. Kevin, thanks for the call. Let's go back to London, talk to Tony. Tony, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hello, George. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Go ahead.
And to listen to this wonderful TV program. We started with Ofcom, George. Ofcom. Only a few weeks ago, they tried to shut Press TV. They must be walking with their heads buried in shame as a result of what happened with the news of the world. Try to shut down Press TV. For what reason? Very good. A lot of people watch it. A lot of people listen to it. No, they try to shut Press TV down.
Well, they haven't tried to shut us down, at least not yet, Tony. We're still waiting for the results of the consideration being given by Ofcom to the complaint in which they found against Press TV. It is possible that they will try to close us down. It is possible that they will not. We're reserving our judgment on that, Tony, until we hear what the result is. But you'll be the first to know. As for Mr. Murdoch and his fitness and his propriety as a person to hold a TV broadcast licence, is there anybody in Britain today, anybody at all, who really thinks that the Murdoch empire are fit and proper people to run a TV station? They're not fit and proper people to run a minicab service, never mind a TV station. Thanks for the call, Tony. Let's talk to Jimmy, again in Britain, on the subject of Greece. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Evening, George.
Hi, sir.
George, 2 points, if you'll allow me to make them. One is about the flotilla and the Greeks.
Yes.
I know it's about the Palestinian the Egyptian relationship with Israel.
Yeah.
Now, these Greeks, they've got to account for every penny they're getting now from the European Union and the International Monetary Fund. So they've got to top up their funds somewhere, and I think Israel is the ideal place for them to top up their funds, these government ministers. I don't know what you think of that.
No, I don't think Israel has money to give Greece, but Israel has very powerful and rich friends, including the government of the United States of America. And Greece is in a very, very perilous position. And to strike out when isolated in Europe on a pro-Palestinian course could be very expensive for Greece. Let's put it that way.
And George, my other one is, a couple of weeks ago, I was on the very last call with very little time, and I suggested that the Egyptians turn off the gas supply to Israel. And you said something about a contract being signed sometime. When did Israel ever pay any attention to any contract, George?
Well, that's a fact, but maybe the Egyptian regime think that they have to do so. Thanks, Jimmy. Let's quickly fit in Anwar in London on Greece and the news of the world. Anwar.
Hello, George. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Go ahead quickly.
How are you? George, very briefly, few things. You remember Robert Maxwell and where he ended up eventually. We know the stories. Mainstream media, BBC has done a lot of things, George. And News of the World today is absolutely awful what we have learned today, George. I wonder, George, if the death of Diana and many other things which have happened in Britain, I've seen in the last 30, 40 years, George, may have linked to contribution of this sort of newspaper and other things.
No, I don't think so, Anwar. I think that Princess Diana died because her driver was drunk and driving at 100 miles an hour and hitting a wall. And if you hit a wall at 100 miles an hour with a drunk driver and you're not wearing a seatbelt, you're very, very likely to die. Not everything is a conspiracy, but that doesn't mean that nothing is a conspiracy, just that that one isn't. I'm actually on this new film about the death of Diana. I don't know if we'll ever see it because, well, here in the land of the free, it's banned. That's the story with Jack and Ori. I'll be back after the news with the second half of Comment, talking about the news of the world and the flotilla. You don't want to miss it. Welcome back to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV. Now, we've been talking about the sinking of the flagship of the Rupert Murdoch newspaper empire, the News of the World, or rather its scuttling by its owner. We've been talking about the attempt to sink, metaphorically speaking, the Freedom Flotilla trying to reach the besieged people of Gaza by sea. But there are another group of Palestinian solidarity activists trying to reach Palestine by air. One of the moving forces behind that imaginative campaign, which may or may not have more success than the seaborne exercise, is Mick Napier of the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign. And he joins us now by Skype. Mick, tell us a bit about this attempt to get into Palestine through Ben Gurion Airport.
Well, it's something that's been brewing now for a few months, George. Many of us have been to Palestine many times, but in order to get there, given that the Israelis destroyed the EU-financed airport, the only way to get there is to go through Ben Gurion Airport, pretty much. And every time we go through there, we are faced with impertinent and arrogant and racist inquisitions, and we have to dissimulate and we have to lie about our intentions and persuade the people who are interrogating us that we have no intention of visiting Palestine. We're fed up with that. We're sick fed up. And we all decided that we would proceed to Palestine again. But this time, when we arrive in Ben Gurion Airport, we would tell the jailers that this was our intention. We're going to stop, pretending otherwise. And that although Palestine's a huge prison, even prisoners are entitled to visitors, and 600 visitors bought their tickets and are ready to fly into Ben Gurion Airport tomorrow afternoon.
So tomorrow's D-Day in that regard. How do you think you're going to get on?
Well, you couldn't make it up. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has described peaceful people flying into Ben Gurion and then taking a bus to Bethlehem as a threat to the existence of the State of Israel. And his ministers have spoken like barroom attendees, talking about us being hooligans and that they'll deal with us harshly. So the Israeli media actually describes the authorities who have set up a special terminal, or who have cordoned off a special terminal at the airport to receive all the flights, has said that they're in hysterics at how to cope with peaceful travellers flying into Ben Gurion Airport and asking to be allowed to proceed to see their Palestinian hosts and spend a week there.
To visit the birthplace of Jesus Christ.
Well, you're making me think, George, that I was utterly nauseated when Tony Blair boasted that he had arranged a fast-track procedure for foreign Christians to proceed into Bethlehem quickly and exit quickly. It was all to promote and to enrich the Israeli tourist industry. But at the same time, we are being denied permission to proceed to Bethlehem. So it's really nauseating, and absolutely, it's...
Well, I know you to be a good Roman Catholic boy, at least by stock. I think it would be a crime to stop you visiting the birthplace of Jesus.
I'm absolutely culturally a Glasgow Catholic. There's no other identity.
I would have thought the Holy Father would have to get involved in that, Mick. You'll have to let me know how you get on. Well, look, Godspeed tomorrow and safe journey to all 600, did you say?
Yes, indeed.
And how is Israel going to know who these 600 are?
It's a very good question. They've sent a letter to European air carriers identifying, they claim, 340 names of individuals whom they demand not be allowed to board from various European cities, including London. And that raises...
What are they going to do? Make you wear some kind of badge on your tunic?
No, they're going to take everybody off the plane and probably... I mean, they're not. They can check our teeth to see if we're activists, but I think when they ask questions, it's our intention to say the truth, We do intend to proceed to Bethlehem. That will be the red light. They do not allow people to visit Palestine. But the issue, George, if I may add something, is that we now see, after the quartet said that the flotilla was responsible for killing 9 Turks, we now see that the siege of Gaza, the siege of Palestine, is not something in the Middle East. It's something that also is enforced from Europe.
Yes, quite. Well, look, Mick, the flotilla hasn't got through. Let's hope the flytilla does get through. There you are, trademark me. Flytilla flies tomorrow. Mick Napier, the very best of luck. Now, one of the activists intending to do the same, I hope under an assumed name, is on the line. He's in Paris. His name is Chris. Let's talk to him. Chris in Paris, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi.
Are you trying to fly tomorrow to Palestine?
Listen, I just returned from the Paris airport, Roissy, and we have been refused to be registered to be on our flight to Budapest and after that to Tel Aviv. So we were on the blacklist because some of us left today, and we have been returned. We are just returning to Paris City because they showed, I mean, there is a letter in Hebrew written to all the fly companies, and those fly companies receive a letter saying that if one of the persons on the blacklist will be on the flights, the flight will be delayed and that person will be returned immediately on the same flight. So in fact, the pressure has been put from the Israeli authorities on the companies, the air companies, and it are the air companies and the local police who are refusing our entry on the flight. So we were thinking before that we would have been refused enter Ben Gurion Airport or to go to Palestine, but it's even worse. I mean,
well, exactly. So let me get this right, Chris. Israel is giving orders now, not just to the United States, but it's giving orders to European governments, European airlines, European airports, and European police forces. Just how far? I mean, I knew the boundaries of Zionism were unclear, undefined. I had no idea that they were so wide, that they could give orders to governments around the world in relation to absolutely legal journeys by European Union passport holders who don't need visas to fly to Ben Gurion, who want to visit the birthplace of Jesus Christ, but who can be stopped by the issuing of a blacklist by this gangster government of Netanyahu. Is that what we're saying?
Our Belgian friends who are organizing a flight tomorrow, they have made a very good statement. They say the borders of Palestine or Israel, it's not 67, it's not 48, it's to Paris, to Brussels, to London. That's the Israeli borders today. Wow. Because they think they can give orders to the European Union governments who are obeying these orders from A to Z. I mean, the flotilla, there is just one small boat going, I think Mickey explained it very well, one small boat who is going to Gaza at this moment, and the Zionist organizations in France are putting a complaint against the French government because they gave the authorization to do so. So with the fly flotilla, it's the same story. We spoke to the French police came to us when we tried to register our flight. They said, we are French police and we cannot allow you to go on this flight. I told them, you are collaborators then with the Israelis, because the Israelis, they give the orders. And it's clear they are very embarrassed, but they are obeying to the orders.
Well, not embarrassed enough. Not embarrassed enough, Chris, and not as embarrassed as we're going to have to make them. Because we cannot accept that this Israeli occupation of Palestine becomes an Israeli occupation of us. This we cannot accept. Let's go to Glasgow, talk to my old friend Tommy about the news of the world. Tommy, welcome to the show.
Hi, George. Assalamu alaikum, man.
Alaikum salam.
And to all your good listeners everywhere in the world, peace and blessings be upon you all. And what I'd like to say is, the news of the world, It was a good day, George, but then, you know, the rearranging of the chairs on the Titanic was, you know, it's probably similar because the same people are in control, the same people are in charge. And I heard a couple of days ago they registered the name The Sun on Sunday, or Sunday Sun or something. So they're definitely going to bring something out. This is just a smoke screen, what they've done today. You know, it's been an absolute sham of a paper for years. Anybody with any common sense or decency would never buy it or touch it or go near it because they know what filth that it is, you know, and so, you know, if they're going to repackage it, if they're going to rebrand it, and it's still going to be the same stuff, then people should not be fooled by it. In fact, The Sun should also be withdrawn, should not be published.
Well, I'm for the boycotting of all Murdoch newspapers. Don't buy them, don't sell them, don't advertise on them. Tommy, thanks for the call. Let me go to London on the same subject. Talk to Davies Dada. Davies Dada, welcome to the show. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, go on, you're on the air.
Hello, George?
Yes, go on, sir.
Hello, George?
Yes, you're on the air.
Yeah, I've got two comments in regard to news of the world closure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my first comment is, firstly, it's easy to blame Rupert Murdoch for the hacking.
Put your television down, please.
Sorry? I said it's easy, like everybody's blaming him, like a lot of people is blaming like for hacking, but at the same time, he's not the one involved in the hacking, is it? Most of his hacking done is from the bottom down. So he's the boss, but if they want to really find out what the problem is...
that's not how it works, actually, in business. The people at the top are responsible for the activities of those below them. That's the way it legally works. That's the only way it can ethically work. Now, the next person to get through better make sure that the volume on their television set is down at zero, or we'll have just as indistinct a conversation as I've just had. Let's hope Eddie in the UK on the flotilla will be more clear. Eddie, welcome.
Hiya, George.
Hi, go ahead, sir.
Nice to get the chance to speak to you at last.
You're welcome, sir.
I watch your programme every week, thoroughly enjoy it, and I felt I had to ring up tonight. There's a couple of things I'd like to mention to you.
Yeah.
Now, this flotilla, I just can't understand what Greece are playing at. I heard you say to an earlier guest that, you know, they weren't sort of being paid off.
No, I didn't say they weren't being paid off. I said they weren't being paid off by Israel.
By Israel, yeah.
Israel takes money, doesn't give it.
That's true. Now, the other thing is, related to that, the flotilla. Can I just make a point about the flotilla from last year?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, tonight we've seen on the news that Ban Ki-moon has made a U-turn. What's all that about? Has he been bribed?
What has he said?
He said that the report says that he now backs the Israelis over the report that came out about
the attack on the Mavi Marmara?
Yeah, well, he is now backing the Israeli side of the argument.
Oh, really? I didn't see that news item. I couldn't comment on that.
That's why I was a bit surprised that nobody had mentioned it.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Your programme had already started.
Yeah.
And, well, I mean, is there anybody in the world, government-wise, that's not corrupt?
Yes, there are new powers emerging. Russia has begun to reassemble its dignity, lost during the Yeltsin years. China is going from strength to strength. Countries like Brazil, like Venezuela, like Bolivia, like Cuba, like Chile, like Argentina. There are countries now that are taking a progressive stand on many things that only a few short years ago would have been found in the opposite corner. I noticed that the United States is warning the Palestinian leaders against declaring statehood. So there we have it. Gaza must remain under siege. Jerusalem must remain under occupation. Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus, must remain behind bars. But if the Palestinians dare to declare themselves a state, the United States of America, which celebrated its own independence just a day or two ago, will come down on them like a ton of bricks. Is it any wonder that in the face of such injustice and double standards, that so many people are so very angry in this world of ours. Let's talk to Mamoon. Yes, Mamoon in London on the flotilla. Mamoon, welcome.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Galloway. How are you doing?
Very well. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say about Israel and, this flotilla business that's going on. I mean, it's a great shame that, if they're delivering aid and, they're blocking, and they've had this blockade, on the Palestinian people all this time. And, yet no nation speaks up against it, only when, it suits them.
Well, Turkey did briefly and seems to have backed away.
That's it. I mean, even though the Turkish people are on board, and it's unfortunate that they got killed and all that kind of stuff. But I just think no one seems to, because there's no self-interest in there. I think everyone remains silent.
Well, I think they're wrong. I think they're wrong if they think there's no self-interest. And of course, you're right. The Turkish people, almost to a man and woman, are 100% behind the Palestinian people.
That's right.
But the Turkish government, that just 12 months ago was lecturing the world on the crimes of Israel, appears to have experienced something of a loss of heart. Mamoon, thanks for the call. I've got to go to the comment wall and take a couple of quick emails. Let's see where they're from and what they're about. We'd like your country and your point of view up here. This one is from France. Benjamin. As George Orwell wrote in 1984, he who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past will control the future. Just maybe now, Murdoch and friends have been shown to be what they are. To the uneducated masses who read and watch this drivel, might at last turn to more reputable broadcasters like yourself, Max Kaiser, etc., to really say what's going on. Benjamin, thank you for that. I must tell you that Press TV's audience is growing exponentially around the world. And in Britain, as has been evident from the selection of calls here this evening, more and more people in Britain are tuning in to Press TV rather than the so-called mainstream broadcasters, because here they'll hear the voice of the otherwise voiceless. Thanks very much for that in France. Let's go back to the comment. We'll take another email. Let's see where this one is from. Nigeria. George, I must say I love what you're doing. When we turn our heads to the media focus, it's as usual for stories to be overbeaten or held from the public. This is more of what I call corruption. About the flotilla too, this motion or mission is pointless and money wasting. Please, they should stay in their homes if they have nothing to do. Well, it's true, like in the parable of the Good Samaritan, you can always pass by on the other side of the road and leave the beaten, the robbed, the miserable, the bereft, the disinherited, the disenfranchised, the exiled, the refugee, the bleeding, the wounded, the dying, the dead. It's always possible to walk by on the other side of the road. But God made us for a more noble purpose than that. At least, my friend, that's what some of us believe, even if you don't. Let's take another call. Is this one from John in France? It is, on the flotilla. John, welcome. John, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, John, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yeah, well, I was just saying that they 500 miles or 400 miles away is Rhodes, which is the nearest Greek place to Palestine. And I can't understand how they can go on the high seas, what excuse they could use to stop any boat at all unless it's suspected of...
well, what they've done, John, is everything that they could do. They intimidated the insurance companies to refuse to insure vessels, and there are many harbours in Europe that will not allow you to sail from those harbours without insurance. They were piling in complaints about seaworthiness of the ships on the flotilla, causing the governments of Europe to go over each vessel with a fine-tooth comb to see if there was any potential technical deficiency that they could use to disqualify the ship. Underwater divers sabotaged in an act of terrorism in European ports the ships of the flotilla, 2 of them disabled. The Greek government has been in some way either bludgeoned or blackmailed or both to refuse to allow the ships to sail and to send its armed gunmen, just like Israel did on the 31st of May, to chase and board those ships carrying machine guns. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? A European Union country boarding a peaceful vessel carrying humanitarian activists, unarmed, peaceniks, tree huggers, hippies, peace lovers, boarding with machine guns their boats. Shame on the government of Greece. Shame, shame, shame on the government of Greece. Let's talk to Glenn in the UK on the subject of Bahrain. Glenn, welcome.
Hello, George.
Go ahead.
Hello, George. Yes, nice to speak to you again. I'd like to say how appalled I am at the sanctimonious dribbles started by the European Union, the United States and NATO over the supposed need for supposed humanitarian war in Libya, and the further supposed need for a humanitarian or so-called humanitarian intervention in Syria, when in fact these people have said nothing at all about the plight of the people of Bahrain. The people of Bahrain...
Or the plight of the people of Palestine, who for 60 years, have required their help and have not received that except help to their oppressor and their occupier. What hypocrites they are, Glenn.
George, it's difficult to determine which the larger or bigger outrage is. Is the outrage regarding Bahrain bigger than the outrage regarding Palestine, or what? Are they equivalently monstrous, or what? But talking about Bahrain specifically, the people of Bahrain have been in a state of virtual siege by Saudi Arabian invaders and by their own forces for months. People have been brutalized, murdered, hospital workers have been assaulted, all sorts of iniquity has been practiced by the so-called Bahraini security forces and the Saudi invaders. And, the people who talk loudest in Washington and Brussels and Strasbourg and elsewhere for the need for supposed humanitarian intervention say absolutely nothing.
No, well, I mean, there's no depth.
Same as with the Greek.
Glenn, there's no depths to which these people will not sink. Their hypocrisy literally knows no bounds. And of course, there are many organs of the British state which, for now at least, ape, like trained monkeys, the tune that they are asked by their governments to follow. But it will not ever be thus. As we proved over the news of the world this very day, people power can really change things. People power can move mountains. The great only appear to be great as long as the rest of us remain on our knees. Well, guess what? We're off our knees. We're standing up. We're fighting on for what's right. God willing, next week.
Hello, if you just comment your name and a place to that number. And just make sure that your television volume's set to 0. So 0. Can you spell your name for me? Yeah, I know. You redirect me, put through the phone number and then